So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Summer Hines, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here with Checking In. I am very excited for this Mindset Reset Bootcamp. This is the second Mindset Reset Bootcamp that we've done, but it's going to focus on new topics and themes. So the lovely Debbie Pearmain is going to guide us through some strategies designed to help strengthen positive intelligence, increase rebound time, and practice greater self-compassion, which I think we all need in times like this. The session is going to be action-based, so if you don't have it handy, please grab a paper and a pen now. Throughout the session, please feel free to engage with us in the chat, preferably not the Q&A, ask questions and chat with Debbie through the chat. We really want this to be interactive. If you haven't had the pleasure of meeting Debbie yet, she is a mental health advocate and human resources consultant. She assists clients in developing mental health and well-being strategies, employee engagement surveys, culture development, training and coaching, all around this mental health and well-being space. Give a wave, Debbie. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
So I would like to take a moment today for a land acknowledgement. Today is June 21st, which is National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. So please join me today in respectfully acknowledging that we at Checking In Vancouver, live, work, and play on the unceded traditional lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, colonially known as Vancouver, BC. Today, I would like for us to recognize the hardships these groups have endured and continue to endure, but we are grateful for the efforts of reconciliation and also hopeful for a brighter future. National Indigenous Peoples Day is an opportunity for us to reflect on the heritage, culture, and contributions of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And Checking In is grateful to be working in collaboration this year with the Squamish Nation community, which is very exciting. We are launching a 21-day challenge with them at the beginning of July, so we are very excited. I'm going to put a link in the chat about National Indigenous Peoples Day, just with some more resources and information for you to take a look through when you have time today. Great, thank you. So who is Checking In? What do? We are a mental health and self-awareness solution for businesses to check in with their employees. We have an app for self-awareness that has mindfulness, meditation, breath work, as well as journaling and other resources for individuals and for businesses. So for our enterprise clients, we have monthly programming, and we offer different programming on wellness topics each month. That includes more private sessions like this one here with Debbie, as well as videos and learning experiences through the app. We work with amazing people like Debbie to provide a holistic wellness experience to our community. I'm going to also pop our socials and website in the chat, so please connect with us and engage with us there. That is all from me. I will pass it over to Debbie to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm welcome. What a lovely introduction. And thank you, Summer, for all your help behind the scenes. So we're just grateful. We are very grateful for all that you do. And here we are today, and we're going to continue on our journey of building resiliency. So I'm just quickly curious, how many of you attended our first Mindset Reset Bootcamp that we had a month ago? Just type a Y in the chat if you were with us. Just love to see if we had people who are coming back. Wonderful. Anyone else attended the first session? Yay. Okay. And we have some new folks, and welcome especially to my old dear friend, Chris. Chris, thank you for joining us. Chris and I have not seen each other in probably 20 years. So very happy to see you here today. And what are we talking about really? So the reason I asked who joined us on our first session is we're just continuing on our journey. And I'm going to give a little bit of background, things that we would have talked about in session one. I think it's always important to have a refresher. I can barely remember what I had for dinner last week, let alone what we discussed a month ago. So when it comes to our mental health and well-being, so much talk today is around the power of resiliency. And as I teach in my workshops that I do for clients, you know, resiliency is this umbrella, and under it, there's a whole bunch of skills. positive mindset being one of them. And I'd like to say that positive mindset is like our superpower. And how do we maintain, right, a positive mindset in the face of change and loss and challenge and failure and disappointment and setbacks, which unfortunately, right, unfortunately, that is the reality of the life and world that we live in today. You know, I grew up, and I don't know if the rest of you were similar to me, with just these ideas of like the kind of happily ever after and the rainbows and the unicorns and the, I don't know, butterflies and the beaches and dancing and all these fun things. I as a young child, had a lot of, yeah, just joy and hope and peace and positivity inside me. And then slowly, right, as life progressed, as I grew up, as things became harder, right, more challenging, more difficult, life experiences. Like I think some of my hardest early life experiences was like the death of a grandparent who I was really close to, the death of a dear friend when I graduated high school that summer. And, you know, just different losses, different failures, setbacks, you know, throughout university. And I can tell you that, you know, my peace and my joy and my optimism started to kind of slowly erode with each experience. And I now teach and coach on these topics daily. And so many adults, right, can relate to just this, you know, kind of this slow loss, right? And this slow change that took place in their spirit over time as life progressed and we started facing, you know, bigger and more difficult or challenging things. So the question, you know, for me in my early 20s was like, how do I regain that? How do I regain, you know, the peace and the joy and the happiness and those things that I for sure experienced, you know, to like overflowing when I was little. I was just full of beans, right? And so this is where I started my own journey. And I think many of you can relate. And even just in the last 2 years, right? The pandemic has really, you know, brought a lot of change and uncertainty to all of us. So the key here, and a lot of this is based on, if you remember from session 1, this book, Positive Intelligence. For those of you who really desire true change and to go kind of deeper into any of the things that we're going to look at today, I just encourage you to read this book. If you don't have time to read the book, you know, you can Google it, you can YouTube it, you can watch little snippets here and there when you have time. You know, I had the privilege of taking a 6-week course 2 years ago. And it was life-changing for me. And that is part of what we're bringing to you in these awesome webinars sponsored by CheckingIn, are some of those tools, some of those tips, some of those practices. So if you're here today desiring, right, more peace, more joy, more positivity, more hopefulness in your life, there's really 3 key things that you and I need to focus on doing more of for ourselves. And in session 1, we talked about identifying those negative mindsets. And there's so many words for that in psychology today: saboteurs, cognitive distortions, negative thinking patterns, right? Whatever you want to call them, doesn't matter. I call it stinking thinking. What's awesome for you and I is that through the website positiveintelligence.com, you can go on there, you can do a free assessment to find out which mindsets are sabotaging you, right? Sabotaging your joy, your peace, your hopefulness, your optimism. We need to become aware. So when I teach any workshops on mental health or resiliency, or I coach people on these topics, I say to them, there's really 3 key things you and I need to do to be successful. Number 1 is become more self-aware. What is working for us? What is not working for us? We can't fix, problem solve, manage, support what we're not even aware of. So step 1 is always self-awareness and identification. Then step 2 is self-management. So once you become aware of these things, so as an example, if you were to become aware of certain negative mindsets or aware of things that are triggers for you or stressors for you, the next question is, what do you do? What are your strategies to help you better manage those things for yourself? Right? So if you find yourself falling into depression or feeling worried or having anxiety or even having panic attacks, right? The first step to change is to get to know your triggers. What's adding to those things? And then the second question would be, what are you doing to help you manage them better? And really, my message is one of empowerment. You and I are in the driver's seat of our lives. We actually have way more control over our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors than we believe that we do. So it's all about what you believe. And the mind is our most powerful resource. It's our superpower. There's all kinds of quotes, right? People have written about this for years. Like, you can literally make hell out of heaven or heaven out of hell. I think Milton said that, right? It's really about your perspective in whatever situation you are in. And you can choose to see things differently. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses. So we're going to talk about that. We did a lot of work on that in session 1. If you can go back and rewatch it, I would suggest that you do. These are not things, it's not a one and done. It's a like everyday thing. It's like going to the gym. I'm working out my biceps. I'm working out my shoulders. You've got to be working on this stuff daily. The brain is a muscle. New neural pathways can be built daily. And it's important we know that. Number 2, absolutely, we need to calm the stress part of our brain. I'm going to talk a bit more about that today. If you are in survival mode, it is actually physiologically impossible for you to think things that are joyful, peaceful, optimistic, and hopeful. Those two things operate in 2 completely different regions of the brain. So if you find yourself struggling on the daily to feel joy, peace, hope, optimism, one of the best things you can do for yourself after leaving here today is create a wellness strategy and really be proactive on your self-care. And as you calm, right, the stressors in your life and you calm your physiology, it will actually help you to think in different regions of your brain that are associated for this peace and positivity and joy. And then lastly, you can do brain gym. So we're going to introduce you today to a couple of different brain gym exercises. And like going to the gym, if you desire to be like a positive mindset heavyweight, you can't do that by showing up and doing brain gym once a week. So when I say to folks I coach, what's your wellness strategy? And if you say like, well, I meditate like once a week, my honest answer is you might as well not be doing it, because you do so much damage the other 7 days of the week. It like completely negates whatever you're trying to do. It's like you saying I'm going on a diet. And so for 6 days of the week, I'm going to eat as much junk food as I want. But one day of the week, I will not eat the junk food. Like, how much progress do you really want to make with this stuff? The good news is I'm not going to ask you to commit to like an hour a day of meditation, because that is absolutely not realistic for most of the people I coach. 5 minutes a day is what you need to get started. So for those of you who are new, right, to this idea of positive intelligence, it's all based on neuroscience, neurophysiology, neuroanatomy, and it's really about understanding how our brain operates. And here's the thing, in all the research, what they have been able to see is that as children, these areas are more balanced. But as we grow, right, because our society is so wired and geared towards things like high performance, competition, rewards, achievement, right? Social media, like there's so many things that unfortunately just like wire us right up. And over time, this is why we kind of lose that real essence, right? Of the peace and the joy and the empathy and the optimism that was present when we were children. Again, if you're curious, there's a ton of research that's been done, especially by this neuroanatomist from Harvard. Maybe you want to put this in the chat there, Summer. Her name is Dr. Jill Taylor. She actually wrote about it after her own personal life experience where she suffered a stroke in certain regions of her brain. And what she realized because of that stroke was she woke up more joyful and peaceful and optimistic and happy. And she was like, what is happening? I just suffered a massive stroke that has really awful like consequences to my life and my body. And I feel like a totally different person. Her mind was calm. Her mind was quiet. So how crazy that she was a neuroanatomist and this happened to her. Now, she's one of the biggest advocates of positive intelligence because she says, that was my divine calling. That was my gift and opportunity to the world. There is no accident that I suffered a stroke in those regions of the brain. So I could live to tell and educate others about what is possible. Very cool. I love reading about this stuff. So if you're like me and you want to learn more about it, check out her research. Okay, so let's just start with a quick check-in. And this is just like what you'd experience, isn't it, Sean, on the CheckingIn app? Let's just even start out. I love scaling questions from a coaching perspective. So as you're sitting here today, right now, how stressed are you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is no stress at all. Feel like, I don't know, Gumby. Happy, peaceful, bouncy, joyful, energized, enthusiastic. Where are you at, right? And then 10 would be like barely hanging on, didn't want to get out of bed, probably should be calling a counselor or a doctor today, right? You're somewhere in there and we're all in process, right? We're all in process. And so every day we're somewhere different. And this is the power of checking in daily is you start to see patterns emerge, right? We develop awareness. The next question I want to ask all of you is what is adding to your stress? So if you're sitting here saying, you know, my stress is a 7 out of 10, what is adding to that? Yeah, so thank you, Sean. I mean, I would absolutely say for me, often it's unrealistic expectations of myself. Another one, keep going, keep adding things in the chat because you're teaching and encouraging others. Another one that I could say is what happens is I sometimes like live in the future in my mind, right? So it's like I get ahead of myself. And when I'm not living in the present, right, I'm missing out on all that this moment has to offer you and me. And I have a big imagination. I'm like pretty creative. And so I can like make up all kinds of stories in my head. Like I often think I should have been like a movie writer or like a fiction writer because I can make up all kinds of these stories in my imagination, most of which are not true. And then like I can even go so far as to believe them. And then the next thing you know, I'm stressed and worried and anxious about something that hasn't even happened. One of my dad, who, if you know me, you know, he's like one of my greatest heroes of all time. He recently passed away. I feel like my life's work is such a dedication to his love, right? And his journey. He taught me such a great saying, which is worry is interest on a problem that isn't due. These are the kind of mantras, right, that you and I literally need to write on sticky notes. So if you haven't met me, sticky notes are one of my favorite things. I have sticky notes all over the place, in the car, on the mirror in my bathroom, on my computer, on my windows, with little mantras that just grab my attention and help my brain, right, to kind of like refocus when it starts running wild, like a wild horse. How many of you can relate to that? Sometimes your brain feels like a horse that's out of control. Well, here's the news. Here's the great news. You're the rider on the horse. The reins are in your hands. Just because your horse in your mind is running wild doesn't mean you have to like be on that ride and have a panic attack and be terrorized. And listen, I've been there. So I have been that rider who's the reins are flying. I'm out of control. I'm hanging on for dear life and I'm feeling terrified. I've been that rider. But over time, you can learn how to pick up the reins, pull the reins in. And as you do that, you feel empowered, you have ownership, you feel grounded, you feel more in control. Again, as you're checking in with yourself, what have you been doing that's taking away from your stress this week? So we need to have a wellness strategy. This has to be proactive. I do so much work in workplaces around supporting mental health and well-being. And one of the things I'm absolutely going to tell you is we don't do enough proactively. So it's like we wait till we're like having a meltdown and in distress or pretty close to burnout to all of a sudden go, I need to do more self-care. We've got to be putting deposits into ourselves regularly to help offset all the withdrawals that are coming at us in our day. So what are you intentionally doing daily to help keep you calm and grounded? Can some of you type your ideas into the chat? What do you do daily to help you stay calm and grounded? And so our real focus today after our check-in is kind of two things. There's three things up here, but you'll understand why I say two things in a moment. Okay, lots of good ideas. Yes, meditation is really helpful. Journaling is helpful. Exercise, breathing. I once saw a woman who had a PhD in self-regulation therapy, and she literally had me breathe in her office for an hour. I won't tell you what I paid her. I paid her a lot, Summer, for a whole hour, simply for her to teach me how to breathe. If you ever watch a young baby sleeping in its crib and the way it breathes, what do you notice? When babies breathe in their cribs, their stomachs expand. And then when they breathe out, they contract. And when adults breathe, we do the opposite. So many of us have like unlearned how to even breathe properly. And we're oxygen starved and deprived, which absolutely is impacting to our stress response. Because as soon as you're withholding oxygen, which is our life force, it sends a message to the survival part of your brain that you're under attack. And you don't even know you're doing it. So simple breath work, 3 times a day, breathing for 5 minutes, big belly breathing, completely can reset your nervous system. So for some of you, that's one action, right, that you can literally take after today. That would be a game changer. Lots of good ideas in there. Time in nature. Okay, thank you for that encouragement. So today we're focused on 2 things. How do you increase rebound time? Meaning when you experience something upsetting, instead of just getting totally sucked into the vortex, or what I call it in this house, the rabbit hole, right? It's like we get stuck in a rabbit hole. And then sometimes we need other people to pull us out. How do you help yourself when you get pulled into the black hole, the tunnel, the rabbit hole, the vortex, whatever you use to describe it? What are your strategies? Number 1. And then number 2, self-compassion is so important. And we're going to look at a couple ways to increase that today. Of course, that leads to greater empathy. So much today is we need to have empathy. We need to have empathy. We need to have understanding. It is impossible to give away to others what we don't possess ourselves. So as you grow in your own self-compassion, you will naturally grow in the empathy that you have for others. Now, I do coach a lot of folks who have a ton of empathy for others and not for themselves, right? And so if that's you, that's a whole different challenge, right? That we need to do some work problem solving. So let's start first with ideas of how to increase your rebound time. And here's the analogy I just want you to picture, or the visual. You're in your kitchen and you're cooking. All right. And you've taken the pot off the stove. And I just want you to picture this right now. The element is still red and hot, right? And by accident, you forget because you're busy doing other things and your hand touches the hot element. What do you do? What do you do? You're cooking. You've taken the pot off. I mean, come on, I've had it. I've got burn scars in different places on my body from, forgetting to put an oven mitt on and grabbing something hot out of the oven. What do? Yeah, you scream, you pull it back, you swear, you drop it, you stop what you're doing. It gets your attention, doesn't it? And it gets your attention instantly. So that is a physical reaction to pain, isn't it? It gets your attention instantly. And then you pull back and you stop what you're doing. Well, this is the skill that you and I need to develop in our minds. So remember earlier I said stinking thinking. Many of us think things that aren't healthy, aren't helpful, aren't true, aren't positive, aren't hopeful, aren't peaceful. And we don't even realize it. We don't even realize that we do it. So that's the first problem. It's like you're cooking, right? And you put your hand on the stove and it's burning and the skin is burning and the smell is, disgusting, but you're not even aware because you're in a whole different mindset. So are you starting to even see now why the practice of becoming more mindful in the present is what is required to help you change some of these negative mindsets? You can't manage what you're not aware of first. So I encouraged everyone on session 1 to go on to positiveintelligence.com, take the assessment that's free to identify your negative mindsets so you can start to spot them, catch them at the onset. And then it's not enough to just catch them, right? Because for me, with a lot of my clients, like the first part of change is just creating that awareness. So as you even sit here today and you look at this list of some of the negative mindsets, by the way, these aren't even all of them. They're just my personal favorite that I put up here. Which ones do you most identify with? Which ones do you think are loudest for you? And I can absolutely tell you that in certain circumstances or around certain people, right, these mindsets or way of thinking will become triggered. So the first step in change is to even recognize that this is what's happening and to recognize that we do have a choice. As my kids were growing up, I often used to say things to them like, just because a thought falls into your head doesn't make it true. And do you know how many adults I coach who don't even know that that's true? They've never been taught that. They're like, what? I've just always believed everything I've thought. Not every thought is true. How about this one? Not every thought is loving. Not every thought is peaceful. Not every thought is kind to yourself or to others. But we get to choose. There is choice in there. So can you catch yourself at the onset, not after 5 minutes of beating yourself up in the boxing ring of your mind? Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I was a classic beat myself up till I was bloody and like lying on the mat, pounding, saying, stop, stop. Like I really struggled with being quite abusive in my own thinking towards myself. And the first step in any kind of well-being or healing mental health journey is to even recognize that this is what's happening, right? Like some of us have a pretty strict harasser that's going on in our minds. It doesn't even, like we could get into all the psychology about it. And you know what? If that's you, part of today is to even say, number one, you're not alone. Number two, there's help for that. Right. And I have worked for years with different counselors, healers, psychologists to unlearn, right, some of my thinking patterns that were self-abusive and unhealthy. So here's some really quick tips, and I want you right now to try this. So think about an issue that you're currently feeling angry, upset, negative, frustrated about. So does everyone have an issue that right away pops into their mind? Okay, and this is in psychology what we call automatic negative thoughts, right? So now what I want you to do is pause, close your eyes. So in order to do this exercise, I want you to close your eyes. Why? Because we are shutting out stimulation. So I want you to take just a few deep, calming breaths for your mind and your nervous system. And then just let your mind wander as you think about this situation, as you think about what's making you angry, upset, hurt, negative, pessimistic, frustrated. And now I want you to think about a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask the questions and I just want you in your mind to answer them. So have you heard these messages before? Is your mind telling you anything new about this situation? Is there any new information that you should consider? Or is this all stuff you already know, you've already heard? And so the question I have for you is, why are you continuing to replay in your mind this information? How is this benefiting you? How is this perhaps hurting you? Can you spot the negative mindsets? So I just want you to take a moment, right, and think, which mindset? There could be a few. Is this the judge? Are your thoughts judging? Are you mind reading and making up a story? Are you catastrophizing? Are you personalizing? Is it all negative or all positive? So are you perhaps discounting certain facts or information? Are any of these thoughts perfectionist? And whatever negative mindset, right, that you identify, the next step is for you to simply acknowledge it. So part of the reason why we replay thoughts in our minds is because they're trying to get our attention. So can you take a moment right now and give that negative mindset your full attention? So you may even want to acknowledge that mindset and say, listen, judge, I hear you. I hear you. I hear your fear. I hear your worries. I hear your concerns. Simply acknowledge it, name it, and acknowledge it. Give it your full attention. And now what I want you to do is stand up for yourself. So find that inner voice. Find that inner voice and speak back to it. And say, listen, I'm on it. So I have heard you loud and clear. I have heard your thoughts. I have heard your concerns, but I am on it. And I'm asking you now to back off. And I even want you to visualize yourself standing strong, standing confident, standing firm. And then lastly, if you can, I want you to just spend a moment thinking about thoughts about the same situation. Try to think about some thoughts that might be more true. So what are some positive things? Or thoughts that are more kind and gentle? Thoughts that are more positive, peaceful, hopeful, even compassionate. And when you're done, I just want you to open your eyes and rejoin us. So there was an example. And the nice thing is you are going to have access to these slides. That was less than 5 minutes, right? So instead of when you find yourself in a situation and these feelings are coming up for you or these thoughts start racing, what our natural instinct is to like push them aside and keep going. And just like a little child in the supermarket, right? Who's like tugging at your leg, trying to get your attention because they really want the candy bar. What do you think happens? The more we just keep doing our to-do list and running here and running there and busy, stuffing it. I'll get back to you. These thoughts just get louder and louder and louder. So one of the practices is to just regularly give yourself 5 minutes to really pay attention to yourself. What are you thinking? What are the mindsets you're spotting? How are you feeling? Acknowledge it. And then practice visualizing, accepting it, letting it go, and redirecting it. Another practice that I want to introduce you to is grounding. We don't have time to do this today, but this is another great 5-minute. And I just wanted to give you a few 5-minute exercises. Grounding is a physical practice that gets us grounded back into our body in the present. And so again, this is where you could just set a timer for 5 minutes and really focus on your 5 senses. So give yourself 1 minute for each sense. And for a whole minute, right, just focus in on one thing that you can see and really work hard to focus your mind only on that one object. What does it look like? What's the texture? What are the colors? What are the nuances? While you're doing these focusing exercises, make sure to stay connected to your breath. And then you can see from the slide, after a minute, we continue on and we then focus on 1 minute of just what you can smell, right? And then you move on to 1 minute of what you can hear. And in the book, these are called PQ exercises, positive intelligence exercises. And research shows 5 minutes 3 times a day is all it takes. So when you start to feel yourself, right, the stress bubbling up, you're like, I started today at a 3 and now I can feel myself at a 5. Do you even notice it or recognize it? And when you do, what is your practice or habit to help bring you back? I want to encourage you that there's lots of ways that you can practice this grounding, many different times of the day. It's easy to get your 5 minutes in. You know, we try to do 10,000 steps, don't we? Just try and get your 5 minutes in 3 times a day. And as we're kind of nearing the end, our whole purpose today was really to also focus on this idea of self-compassion. And so why is that so important? Because so many of us as adults have become so judging and critical and perfectionist and hard on ourselves. And it's a bit what I was saying earlier of the like beating ourselves up. So can you catch yourself quickly when you're having those thoughts? That is, again, how you're going to change and become more self-compassionate, right? So catching yourself quickly, and then name the feelings that you're having. Allow yourself to feel them fully. Practice accepting yourself for who you are. And this is where those mantras, I think, are really helpful. And I encourage you to put mantras on sticky notes, right? So the mantras could say something like, I'm doing the best I can for right now. Your mantra might say something like, I am learning and growing daily. Your mantra might say something like, this is the best that I can do today, right? But come up with a mantra that feels right and sounds right for you. We know that visualization and mantras are powerful. Even if you were to spend 5 minutes a day with your eyes closed, visualizing yourself saying statements to yourself that are full of self-compassion and acceptance, that are loving towards yourself. Look at this. Over the course of a month, your self-compassion can grow as much as 23%. When you are struggling to have empathy for others, visualizing them, right? Even as a young child is another great exercise that you can do, because as children, we naturally feel kindness and empathy and joy towards others. Visualizing yourself as a young child is powerful. So another exercise, right, for you to try is the visualization of letting go of some of these feelings that are, you know, not loving and kind towards yourself. Now, I'm grateful that I have Sean and Summer in the background to keep me on track with our time. And of course, as you can see, there's lots of things that we can try after today. But what's really important to me is not just like, I'm grateful you showed up here today and that you gave us your 45 minutes. I really want each of you to commit to one action step and really even just try to do 5 minutes a day to start, right? Make it part of your wellness strategy. And then you could increase it to 2 times a day for 5 minutes. But pick an exercise that you've heard today. It could even be as simple as this one here, which is get a few sticky notes and put some of these self-compassion statements on them and just place them in different places around your house. So as we wrap up today, I just want to leave you with just to remember to be gentle and kind with yourself, right? We are all worthy of love. We are all learning. We are all growing. And we are all doing the best that we can every day. So as we end here, I just want to pause and allow those of you who want to stay on, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to spend a couple minutes to take questions.
All righty, I will jump in. And if anybody does have any questions, pop them in the chat. Debbie, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for the coaching session. A virtual round of applause, or a real one in my case, for Debbie. I have a couple quick closing remarks, but feel free to hop off if you need to go. If you are an HR leader, please reach out to me via email. I've put my email in the chat. I would love to chat with you about how checking in can help your organization. I'll also be sending out the recording and the slides following the session so you can refer back. And then right after the session, you'll also be prompted to fill out a survey. So please do so because it really helps us curate content that is helpful for you. And the last thing I have is that we have scheduled our next Mindset Reset Bootcamp, which will be on August 16th at 8:15 a.m., same time. I have put the link to register in the chat, so please join us. We can't wait for that again with Debbie. Other than that, thank you for joining us and taking the time today to focus on you, and we hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thank you,
you,
everybody.
Summer. So I do want to
Oh.
just say I saw a quick question, and it was a great question. How do we spot the negative mindsets? So like today, what I want to encourage you to do, and we just, of course, it would be great if we even had more time, write down your thoughts. So as you're sitting reflecting on that issue or challenge that's upsetting you, and I said, just let yourself think about it for 5 minutes, give it your full attention. If it's hard for you to spot the negative thought patterns in your mind, which for a lot of us it is, like after lots of practice, I can now hear it come out of my mouth. I can spot it quickly. But in the beginning days, I couldn't. And so what I encourage you to do is write down. So freehand journal writing, just dump it. It's called thought dumping. Get it all on paper. And then once you're all done, go back and reread it. And just have the list of negative thought patterns on a piece of paper beside you, right? And then see if you can spot them. And when you can, write it in the margin, like that was a judging statement. That was an assumption. Whoa, I'm mind reading there. Or wow, I'm really taking that personally. Like just start doing it as that kind of a daily journal exercise, even 5 minutes. Will build your awareness and then your ability. And then it's like driving a car, right? Over time, you'll be able to catch this stuff without even realizing it. So I hope that that is a good tip for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.